Close your eyes. You're walking alone through a medieval German forest. The year is 1589. The moon, full and bloated, hangs like a dead eye in the sky. Somewhere in the darkness, a child's scream cuts through the air and then stops, suddenly, completely. The silence that follows is worse than the scream. What you don't know is that you're standing in the hunting ground of the most prolific serial killer in European history. A man who confessed to 25 murders. A man who claimed he wasn't a man at all when the moon rose. A man named Peter Stump, the werewolf of Bedburg. But here's what will keep you awake tonight. He might not have been lying about the transformation, not in the way you think. Welcome to the most disturbing rabbit hole on YouTube. Today, we're not just telling you about werewolves. We're going to show you why this legend refuses to die. Why it appears in every culture on Earth. Why modern psychiatrists still document cases of people who believe they're transforming into wolves, and why the scientific explanations might be more terrifying than the myth itself. By the end of this video, you'll understand why the werewolf isn't just a monster in a movie. It's something far more disturbing, a mirror held up to humanity's darkest impulses, reflecting back what we're most afraid to see in ourselves. Are you ready to stare into that mirror? Let's begin. The werewolf legend doesn't start with Hollywood. It doesn't start with medieval Europe. It starts with the gods themselves and an act of blasphemy so horrific that it created a new word for monstrosity. Ancient Greece, approximately 800 BCE, King Lycaon of Arcadia ruled a prosperous kingdom, but he harbored doubts about the gods. When Zeus himself descended to walk among mortals, Lycaon decided to test the king of gods in the most depraved way imaginable. He murdered a child. Some accounts say it was a hostage. Others claim it was his own son. Butchered the body, cooked the flesh, and served it to Zeus as a feast. Zeus, of course, knew immediately what he was consuming. The god's rage was thermonuclear. But he didn't simply kill Lycaon. That would be too merciful. Instead, Zeus cursed him with a transformation that matched his crime. Lycaon's body twisted, bones snapping and reforming. Hair, thick, gray and bristling, erupted from his skin. His scream became a howl. His hands became paws that would forever crave to kill, just as he had killed. The Greeks called this transformation lycanthropy, literally wolf, human. The word itself is a scar on language, a permanent reminder of the monster Lycaon became. But here's where it gets disturbing. This wasn't just a Greek story. In Norse mythology, elite warriors called the Ulfhednar wore wolf pelts and entered ecstatic trance states before battle. Historical accounts describe them as unstoppable, immune to pain, fighting with inhuman strength. They bit their shields, they howled. They didn't just fight like wolves. Witnesses swore they became wolves. In France, medieval chronicles document the loup-garou. In Eastern Europe, the Volkodlak. In Ethiopia, the Buddha. In Japan, shape-shifting creatures called were-animals haunted the countryside. In Native American traditions, skinwalkers walked the night. Every continent, every civilization, the same nightmare, wearing slightly different fur. Why? What is this archetype tapping into that it appears everywhere humans tell stories? The answer is more unsettling than any campfire tale. The werewolf represents the fragility of human civilization. We're all just one bad moon away from losing control, one moment of rage from becoming something we don't recognize. The werewolf is the animal that never left us. It just learned to wear human skin and wait for the right moment to tear its way back out. And in medieval Europe, that moment came for thousands of people.
Between 1520 and 1620, Europe drowned in blood and superstition. The witch trials get all the attention, but parallel to them ran another prosecution, the werewolf trials. Conservative estimates suggest that over 30,000 people were accused of lycanthropy in France alone. Thousands more across Germany, Switzerland, and Eastern Europe. These weren't just accusations, these were confessions, extracted through torture so elaborate and cruel that death would have been a mercy. Let me tell you about Peter Stumpf in detail, because his case file reads like something from a horror novel, except every word is documented historical fact. 1589, Bedburg, Germany. For 25 years, children had been disappearing. Mutilated corpses turned up in fields, torn apart with inhuman savagery. The attacks escalated. Stumpf was a prosperous farmer, a respected member of the community. He had a wife, children, a successful farm. He also had a secret. When authorities finally captured him after witnesses claimed to see him transform, he was subjected to the most brutal torture devices of the era. On the rack, his limbs slowly pulled from their sockets, Stumpf confessed to everything. He claimed the devil had given him a magical belt made of wolf skin. When he wore it, his body transformed. He grew fur, fangs, claws of iron. He became stronger than 10 men, and he was hungry, ravenously, endlessly hungry. His confession was monstrously detailed. He murdered and ate 14 children. He killed 2 pregnant women and tore the children from their wombs. He confessed to incest with his daughter, to cannibalism, to 25 years of sustained predation on his own community. His execution matched the horror of his crimes. He was strapped to a wheel. Executioners used red-hot pincers to tear flesh from his body in 10 places. They broke his limbs with a wooden axe. They cut off his head. Then they burned his body on a pyre, erected a pole with a wooden wheel showing the image of a wolf, and placed his head on top as a warning. But here's the question that should haunt you. Was Stumpf actually guilty? Under torture, people confessed to anything. The magic belt was never found. Stumpf claimed he'd thrown it away before his capture, and of course, it could never be recovered. Some historians believe Stumpf was guilty of real crimes. Perhaps he was a serial killer or a cannibal driven by famine and madness. Others believe he was simply a victim of mass hysteria, tortured into confessing to crimes that fit the narrative his persecutors wanted to hear. The truth? We'll never know. But his case opened the floodgates. Suddenly, werewolves weren't legend. They were real. They were among us, and they looked like your neighbor. The trials spread like plague. In 1598, the Gandillion family in France was torn apart by an angry mob, convinced they were werewolves, ripped to pieces before they could even stand trial. In 1603, a teenager named Jean Grenier claimed he was a werewolf and had eaten over 50 children. He was sentenced to life imprisonment in a monastery, where he died still believing he transformed under the moon. These cases share disturbing patterns: social outcasts, people with mental illness, those who didn't fit into rigid societal norms. The werewolf accusation became a weapon, a way to eliminate anyone who made the community uncomfortable. But it also reveals something deeper about human nature. We needed the werewolf to be real. We needed an explanation for the evil in our midst, because the alternative, that ordinary humans were capable of such monstrous acts without any supernatural excuse, was too terrifying to accept.
Now let's talk about what really creates a werewolf. And I promise you, the scientific explanations are more disturbing than any supernatural curse. First, ergotism, known in medieval times as Saint Anthony's fire. Ergot is a fungus that grows on rye grain, especially in cold, damp conditions. Medieval Europe's bread was often contaminated with it. When consumed, ergot produces alkaloids similar to LSD. The effects: violent hallucinations, convulsions, a sensation of insects or hair crawling beneath the skin, paranoia, and aggressive behavior. Imagine you're a medieval peasant. You eat bread. Within hours, you feel your skin burning and crawling. You look down and swear you see fur sprouting from your arms. Your fingers feel like they're lengthening into claws. Your teeth feel sharp. You're overcome with rage and hunger. You attack your neighbors. They see your convulsions, your frothing mouth, your animalistic behavior. They don't see poisoning. They see transformation. Entire villages could be affected simultaneously. Now you understand how werewolf outbreaks could sweep through regions. It wasn't supernatural. It was bred. Second, rabies. Rabies is one of the oldest documented diseases in human history, and its symptoms read like a werewolf checklist: hydrophobia, fear of water; hypersalivation, foaming at the mouth; photophobia, aversion to light, hence nocturnal behavior; aggression, confusion, hallucinations, an overwhelming urge to bite. The virus is typically transmitted through animal bites, most commonly in historical Europe from wolves. Connect the dots. A person is bitten by a wolf. Weeks later, they develop symptoms that make them act feral, violent, afraid of light, driven to bite others. Their neighbors, lacking medical knowledge, witness someone literally infected by a wolf, becoming wolf-like themselves. The legend writes itself. Third, and perhaps most disturbing, clinical lycanthropy. This is a real, documented psychiatric condition. It's rare, only a few hundred cases in modern medical literature, but it's real. Patients genuinely believe they're transforming into animals, most commonly wolves. One case study from 1977, a 49-year-old woman was admitted to a psychiatric hospital. She believed she was turning into a wolf and had been one in a past life. She reported feeling her teeth elongating, seeing fur on her face when she looked in mirrors. She experienced an overwhelming urge to hunt and kill. Her delusion was so powerful that she could describe the sensation of transformation in vivid, terrifying detail. Another case, 1989. A 20-year-old man was found in the cemetery, howling at the moon. He believed he was a wolf trapped in a human body. Under psychiatric evaluation, he described the feeling of his bones shifting, his skin itching as fur pushed through. Modern psychiatry links clinical lycanthropy to schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, or severe depression with psychotic features. But understanding the brain chemistry doesn't make these cases less terrifying. These people aren't pretending. They genuinely experience transformation. Now imagine these conditions occurring in medieval Europe, where the supernatural was the default explanation for anything unusual, where torture was used to extract confessions, where mass hysteria could spread through communities like wildfire. The werewolf trials weren't about monsters, they were about sick people being murdered for their illness. Fourth, hypertrichosis, the werewolf syndrome. This is a real genetic condition causing excessive hair growth all over the body, including the face. In medieval times, people with hypertrichosis were exhibited as curiosities, feared as cursed, or killed as monsters. Petrus Gonzalez, born in 1537 with hypertrichosis, was exhibited across European courts as the Wolf Man. His children inherited the condition, and their portraits, preserved in museums, show faces covered in fur. They weren't werewolves, they were just human beings with a genetic condition, trying to survive in a world that saw them as monsters. Finally, let's talk about actual serial killers. The term werewolf has been used by criminologists to describe a specific type of repeat killer, those who enter a dissociative state during their crimes, who describe feeling like they become someone or something else. The BTK killer, Dennis Rader, described his crimes as committed by a separate entity. The monster, as he called it, would take over, and when he came back, the deed was done. Some serial killers genuinely experience dissociative episodes where they don't feel fully human during their crimes. Others fake it for an insanity defense, but the pattern is there, the monster within, waiting to emerge. So here's the horrifying truth. Werewolves are real. They're just not supernatural. They're poisoned people hallucinating. They're rabies victims dying horribly. They're mentally ill people experiencing delusions. They're people with genetic conditions being persecuted. They're serial killers hiding behind a myth. The werewolf is real because human suffering is real, because cruelty is real, because we're capable of seeing monsters even when we're looking at sick, scared people who need help. Universal Pictures releases The Wolf Man, starring Lonnie Chaney Jr. This film changes everything. Before this movie, werewolves in folklore were purely evil, malevolent witches or devil worshippers who chose their transformation. They were villains, period. But Universal did something revolutionary. They made the werewolf sympathetic. Larry Talbot, played by Chaney, is a good man. He's returning home, trying to reconnect with his father, starting fresh. Then he's bitten defending a woman from a wolf attack. He doesn't choose lycanthropy. It's forced upon him. He's cursed. Every full moon, Larry transforms against his will. He retains no memory of his actions as the wolf. When he wakes up human again, he's tormented by evidence of what he's done. He doesn't want to be a monster. He begs to be killed before he hurts anyone else. The film introduced tropes we now consider canon: the full moon trigger, the silver bullet as the only way to kill a werewolf, the transformation as a curse, not a choice, the pentagram appearing on the victim's palm.
It also gave us that haunting poem. Even a man who is pure in heart and says his prayers by night may become a wolf when the wolfbane blooms and the autumn moon is bright. This poem encapsulates the film's philosophy. Anyone can become a monster. Goodness is no protection. Prayer is no shield. The beast can claim you regardless of your virtue. This version of the werewolf resonated because it speaks to something universal, the fear that we're not in control of ourselves, that something inside us, rage, addiction, mental illness, trauma, could take over and turn us into someone we don't recognize. The tragic werewolf became the template. Every werewolf story since owes something to Larry Talbot's anguished howls. An American Werewolf in London, 1981, perfected the body horror of transformation with groundbreaking practical effects. The protagonist, David, is tormented by the decomposing ghosts of his victims, begging him to kill himself before he kills again. The Howling, 1981, explored werewolf communities, the idea that lycanthropies might find each other, form packs, even prefer their wolf nature to humanity. Ginger Snaps, 2000, used lycanthropy as a metaphor for puberty and female sexuality, the body transforming in ways you can't control, developing urges you don't understand. The Twilight series, 2005 to 2008, introduced werewolves as protectors, noble shapeshifters defending humanity. The Underworld films, 2003 to 2016, gave us werewolves in an endless war with vampires, centuries-old supernatural soldiers. Even comedy got in on it. Teen Wolf, 1985, What We Do in the Shadows, 2019, making the werewolf not just scary, but absurd, pathetic even. But beneath every iteration, horror, action, comedy, romance, the core remains. The werewolf represents transformation, the fear that you're not who you think you are, that under the right conditions, the civilized person you've carefully constructed could shatter, and something primal could claw its way out. In our modern era of viral videos and internet culture, the werewolf has found new life. Transformation videos get millions of views. People create elaborate costumes and makeup tutorials. Furry culture embraces the human-animal hybrid. The werewolf has become participatory. You can be the werewolf, not just watch it. And during the full moon, social media explodes with werewolf memes, jokes about feeling the change, people howling at the moon. We've domesticated the werewolf, made it safe, even fun. But strip away the Hollywood makeup and CGI. Remember the torture chambers of medieval Europe, the screaming children who never came home, the mentally ill people burned alive. The werewolf stops being fun pretty quickly.
So, after this journey through history, mythology, science, and cinema, we return to the question that started this all. Is the werewolf real? The answer is yes and no, and something more complicated than either. No, people don't physically transform into wolves. Biology doesn't work that way. There's no magic, no curse, no full moon trigger that rewrites your DNA. But yes, the werewolf is absolutely real as a psychological and cultural phenomenon. It's a story we keep telling because we need it, because it expresses truths about human nature that are difficult to articulate any other way. The werewolf is the rage you felt that scared you, the moment you looked in the mirror and didn't recognize yourself, the addiction that takes over despite your best intentions, the trauma that makes you lash out at people you love, the mental illness that hijacks your thoughts, the primal urges that civilization tries to suppress but can never fully eliminate. It's the understanding that within every human being there's an animal. Not metaphorically, literally. You are a mammal, an apex predator. Your ancestors survived by being capable of incredible violence. That capacity didn't disappear just because you live in a city and wear clothes and use a smartphone. The werewolf is the acknowledgement that the line between human and animal is thinner than we'd like to admit, that civilization is a recent invention, a thin veneer over millions of years of evolutionary programming. And, perhaps most disturbingly, the werewolf is the recognition that sometimes we want to let the beast out. That there's a dark satisfaction in rage, in giving in to impulses, in dropping the exhausting performance of being a good person and just acting on instinct. The werewolf is temptation. The werewolf is the thing you're afraid you could become if you stopped trying so hard not to be it. This is why the legend won't die. You can't kill it with silver bullets or rational explanations or modern medicine, because the werewolf isn't out there in the forest. It's in here, in all of us, waiting. Think about the last time you were truly, blindingly angry. In that moment, did you feel entirely human, or did something else surface, something older, something that didn't care about consequences or morality or who got hurt? That's the werewolf. That split second where you understood viscerally that you're capable of things you don't want to think about. The ancient Greeks understood this. That's why Zeus cursed Lycaon to become on the outside what he already was on the inside, a predator, a killer, something that had abandoned its humanity long before the transformation made it visible. The medieval Europeans understood this. That's why they needed the werewolf to be real, to be catchable, to be punishable. Because if monsters don't exist, then we have to accept that humans, ordinary humans, are capable of extraordinary evil, all on their own. Hollywood understood this. That's why Larry Talbot's tragedy resonates. He's us, fighting against something inside himself, losing that fight, becoming something he never wanted to be, and being destroyed because of it. The werewolf is a warning. It says, pay attention to the beast. Don't pretend it isn't there. Don't assume you're immune. Everyone is one bad day, one traumatic event, one chemical imbalance away from becoming something they don't recognize. But it's also a promise. It says you're stronger than you know. You're more resilient than you think. You contain multitudes, both the beast and the human who keeps it chained. And every day you choose to be decent, to be kind, to control your worst impulses. That's you winning a battle against a very real monster. The next time there's a full moon, go outside and look at it. Feel that ancient stirring, that sense of something primal responding to lunar pull. Don't be afraid of it. Just acknowledge it. You carry the wolf with you. We all do. The question isn't whether the beast exists, it's what you do with it.
So there you have it, the Wolfman. Ancient myth, medieval nightmare, Hollywood icon, and eternal metaphor for the duality of human nature. From King Lycaon's blasphemous feast to Peter Stump's horrifying execution, from ergot poisoning and rabies to clinical lycanthropy and serial killers, from Lon Chaney Jr.'s tragic howl to the millions of werewolf videos flooding the internet right now, the legend endures because it speaks truth. We are animals who learned to speak, predators who learn to smile, beasts who learn to prey, and sometimes, under the right conditions, we forget which one we're supposed to be. If this video kept you up at night, good. That means you're paying attention. Hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives into the darkness, and let me know in the comments what legend should we unravel next. Until then, remember, even a man who is pure in heart. Stay safe out there. The full moon is coming.